Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide. Welcome back, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
We today are offering an episode that maybe we should have done like a month ago while people were making plans, but in the spirit of it's never too late. And you can think about this for next year. We're going to talk about Halloween, which I know is about a week away. Mm-hmm. And probably, again, your plans are made, but maybe even little adjustments can be made if there's something that you think about from this session this session. Look, I do professional development. I call it a session. From this episode, sorry, folks, from this episode, maybe it'll give you some food for thought about an approach for next week, or again, like for planning for the year to come, because we know these things take a long time to plan.
Yeah.
And so we present you with the topic, Halloween or not, which is something that I think many people may have felt differently about, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. But today we have to give it some thought because we're in a very diverse world, and a world in which we know about how important it is that every child feels like they belong, and they belong in our settings, and no one feels weird or left out or out of place. And we also are, I think, far more aware that not every family celebrates Halloween.
Right.
At some point, early childhood programs decided it was super cute to have children in costumes. So we're going to have parties and parades and all these things, but not everyone celebrates this holiday. And I can tell you from personal experience that there are many children who straddle these two worlds in a really uncomfortable way. They have certain people in their lives telling them, we don't do this. They have other people in their lives saying, oh, what's it going to hurt? And then they've got their early childhood programs saying, let's all do this.
Yeah, it's
a very confusing, for fun. It's a very confusing message to young children who are coming from a culture that, even if their families don't say it, the overall message from the culture is, we don't do this.
Yeah.
And it's true for a lot of people.
Yeah. I think you could even be in the culture that celebrates Halloween and still not want to celebrate Halloween for various reasons. Like, it's scary. There's people dressed up in weird things. You could be in the culture and still be like, it's not my thing. And then we're still.
Don't you get children upset every year? You get young children upset every year when everybody puts their costumes on or masks on or, whatever it is. We always get children getting scared and upset.
Yeah. And I feel like it forces some kids to dress up when they don't want to. There's even just that. Like, it might not even be scary. They're just like, I'm not into this. Like, I'm not into dressing up. I don't want to do this. And then it's like a picture op kind of thing. Oh, come on, just put your outfit on and I'll take your picture. Like, but why? Why are you forcing them to do that?
Do we even understand? Isn't it, I could be wrong here, but doesn't it go back to a religious belief, this dressing up and people not knowing who you are? But again, I could be very wrong.
The way I grew up, the understanding I grew up with of Halloween was it's the day before a religious holiday for saints, and you wanted to dress up to scare all the evil spirits away so that on the next day it would just be the good spirits, is how I understand that it came about. But I think there's other maybe religions or cultures that think of it. There's a different reason why it started. I don't know but that's what I was told when I was a kid. This is why it's on October 31st, because the next day is a religious holiday and we need to get rid of all the evil spirits and we're going to dress up and scare all the evil spirits away, kind of thing.
So That's super
How it
interesting
turned
because
into
I
like
grew
go
up.
next door to get candy and all this stuff. I don't remember.
How it
I don't
turned
know.
how it turned into go beg the neighbors for candy, I don't
Yeah.
know either. But I grew up with an understanding that this was a pagan holiday and therefore not part of my religion.
Mhm.
And we don't in my faith-based world, we don't do this because it originated as a pagan ritual. Um, I don't know. Regardless, I think of where it came from or what children's cultures are teaching them, we have to acknowledge that there are so many families or their cultures the children come from that don't do this, or the families feel a lot of pressure to just go, all right, we're going to let them dress up and go ask for candy, even though we don't believe in this. Like, why are we doing that even?
Or we're going to let them dress up to go to the school parade, but then we're not going to go trick or treat because we don't believe in it, which I think is also like this
That's confusing.
weird, confusion, right? Because I feel like, there's parents who are like, I don't want my child to be left out on the school parade, which, why are we having a school parade? Okay. Like,
I'm not sure. Again, because somebody thought it was super cute, I think.
and I'm not saying like, sure, there are sometimes that school parade is incredibly cute, but there is always a percentage of kids who are in the corner crying because they either don't want to have their outfit on or they don't want to march in front of hundreds of people. Okay. Which is weird too, and it's like, why is this part of school?
Can we teach children something like, and I'm just going to go by the two that I know, and I'm sure there are others out there. Can't we just teach children something like, some people celebrate Halloween. On Halloween, they do this. Other people celebrate, and I'm going to use the Jewish example, a holiday called Purim. They dress up for that because other people celebrate, and then just talk about all the different celebrations in different cultures that exist, having to do with anything having to do with, I don't know, celebrating, dressing up. I don't even know. But
why can't
I think that there should be a more universal acknowledgement.
Right. Or how about we don't need to mention it at all? Right. There's that.
Which is what I believe Head Start does, right? Head Start
yes,
does
I
not
worked at Head
mention it at all.
Start last year. They did not celebrate Halloween. They did not mention Halloween. There were children in my class that came in where their individual families celebrated Halloween, and they would tell me, hey, I went trick-or-treating, or I went to a costume party or whatever. And you'd be like, oh, that's very nice. But other than that, there was no parade, there was no party, there was no mentioning of it. And it actually was very lovely. Okay. Because there was no stress.
I believe it.
It was just like,
I believe it. Right now,
know?
folks, educators are listening to this going, yeah, that whole thing is just a break in routine and really stressful and riles the kids up. And all right, like that whole thing is like, oh, we have to do this again. I directed an early childhood program where we also, now that I think of it, Alison, we didn't even talk about this before, but now that I go back in my brain, I directed an early childhood program and we did not acknowledge Halloween. I had families come and say, oh, it's such a shame you're not doing Halloween. And we used to explain why we didn't acknowledge it in our program and tell them you're welcome to do what you want to do at home. If you want to have your own party for the children in the class somewhere, you can do that. And there was one year where the families sort of came together, some of them anyway, and decided they were going to have a gathering for the children who celebrate Halloween, like outside of school. They did it in somebody's yard or something. I didn't care about that.
Yeah, I'm all for that. It's the same thing with any of the other holidays, right? Like if a child comes in and talks about Hanukkah or Christmas, you're going to be like, oh, that's very nice. But then you're just going to move on, right? Like you're not going to dedicate your whole day. But for some reason, like when you work in public school, Halloween is a humongous deal. Like, and it disrupts the entire day. It disrupts the entire week. Okay, like it is so ridiculous.
Disruptive. It's so disruptive when you're a teacher. It is beyond of disruptive. And I have to tell you that there were times as a parent when the Halloween parade was coming in school and I would be telling my kids, oh, the Halloween parade is coming. You have to get dressed up. And they were annoyed. Like I remember my kids, I don't want to wear my this. I don't want to wear that. Can we get a different costume for school? I want this costume for school and that costume for home. And I was like, oh my goodness. So it was like disruptive at home too. We
Yes.
have to keep thinking about, how did this start and why? And I think it started because of this majority mindset that everyone should do what what people perceived the majority do, and it's not the case, folks. If you dig into any group of families, you're going to find a difference of cultures, a difference of opinion, a difference in how they celebrate things, even within holidays, right? So Halloween, let's talk about Halloween. I have barely anybody going door to door in my neighborhood. They do
No,
trunk
it's
or
frowned
treats.
upon now. Yes. They
Yeah,
do
they do
trunk or
trunk or treats,
treats. Yeah.
which,
They
by
do
the way, even if the
responsiveness.
trunk or treat is done at the public school parking lot, it's a family choice whether to go and participate. So it's
Correct.
done outside of school hours. They're welcome to go or not. Families can decide what their cultural stance is on this, or what their beliefs are in their family and what they're going to do. We also, where I live, I know a lot of the stores will give things out if you bring children in
If you go to like the local
for
mall,
Halloween.
like at my house,
Yeah,
there's a local mall in my house, and you can go trick or treat store to store, inside, whether it doesn't even matter the weather, you can just go and do your thing, and then the stores will give you stuff. That's been like that
right.
since I was a kid, even, but like they still do that. But I'm telling you,
I don't
coming
get
from
I get hardly any kids here. I
I
don't.
know, but
And
I'm telling you that if you, as an administrator or a teacher, say, hey, we're going to not do Halloween this year, there is going to be an uproar of parents. And I know this because when I worked in the public school, the previous school, okay, they had a holiday sing along for Christmas, okay?
mm-hmm.
And maybe they would throw like one Jewish song in there, okay? But they try,
Oh,
and
geez,
the music,
thanks.
right? Thanks a lot. But like the music teacher there tried to get rid of that and said, hey, I don't want to do the holiday sing along. And the administration agreed to it. She went to board meetings and everything until the parents found out, oh, there's not going to be a holiday sing along. And they had such an uproar that the day before they said, okay, we'll put one together really fast. And the music teacher was mad. And I don't blame her because she went through
I would
this
be
whole thing.
angry too.
And
Yeah.
it was like they threw a fit over not having a holiday sing along, which, by the way, really disrupted everything. Okay. So I imagine if you go up to somebody and say, hey, let's get rid of Halloween and the Halloween parade, there's going to be
Although
an uproar.
programs have gotten rid of it. If families are in an uproar about the holiday show, we need to look at them and say, go to your place of worship, tell them you want the children in this place of worship to put on a holiday show, because then it'll be for your holiday. There's supposed to be a separation of church and state, and then it gets all mangled at these times of years.
Yes.
I know of programs that were really brave, and they said, we are doing away with it, but they did a lot of explaining to families, and they replaced it with something.
Yes.
So maybe it's some sort of fall celebration, harvest, something.
Harvest. Yeah, something.
Right?
But
something. We're going to
without
go
the
pick
costumes.
pumpkins
Yeah.
for fall. So the program that I directed, and we did not do Halloween. We did, though, go to farms, and we saw apple. We went apple picking, and you could go to a farm and go pumpkin picking if you want, without it having to be a celebration of a holiday that not all the families or children do.
And now it's an educational experience, right? Going to a farm
Yes.
is a very educational experience. I don't know what the educational experience is of forcing a child to dress up in a costume and parade around the parking lot of a school. Not quite sure.
Let me think.
Other than
Yeah, no, I have nothing other than
maybe not
anxiety.
right or
Here's
something.
an anxious experience for you. You're going to parade you around, and you're going to be desperately looking for your family in this crowd of adults all holding up smartphones to take pictures. And if you don't see your family, we expect that you're going to melt down because you saw someone else's families there. It's
Well,
a
yeah,
mess, people.
it's a mess
It's
because you also have like okay, some parents can't come because they can't get off of
yes.
work, but when I worked, it was also like a contest of the haves and the have-nots, almost, of like, oh, whose costume is incredibly fancy versus like who made their costume at home. And then it was like this comparison constantly of like, your costume's not as good as mine, or like, it was like the stupidest thing, but that's what it
No,
was, you know,
it was
right.
my children. It was my children going in the purchase costumes, and these other children had these elaborate homemade things. And we
Oh,
would
the
look,
elaborate
some of the parents, we would look at each other and go, did she really make that? Like, that looks homemade. That's on
right.
how
People who
long
have
did she
made the
spend?
costumes
And
like for 6 months, they
and
plan this out.
right.
Yeah, like,
And if you want to spend 6 months making your kid's costume, all the more power to you. It doesn't
if
have to
your
be
kid
shown
wants
off at
that,
school. Well,
if
that's
your
a whole
kid
other
wants
topic.
okay.
But
Yeah.
the family, you can still do that, folks. You can still make your child's costume or purchase your child's costume. You can still go trick or treating. You can still do all these things, however it is you do it in your area. My son, who lives less than an hour away, he gets a lot of children trick or treating because he lives in a walking town on a sort of a main
Okay.
street.
Here's
So
the
they get
difference.
a
I
lot
live
of
in a
children
walking
going to the
town.
stores, going to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
I get nobody,
he
but
told me,
also like my town will put on a party at the local park where they have booths,
there you
like
go.
businesses set up booths, and that's where the trick-or-treating takes place. So like, yeah, even though like I'm in a walking neighborhood, people aren't trick-or-treating for that. Like they'll go to the party, you know, and fine by me. I don't gotta buy candy, but like still, you know, like
Can we just let families make family decisions? I think that's where I land on it. This is a family decision. The schools don't need to be a part of this. Your early childhood program doesn't need to be a part of it. And I know you're all thinking, but the parents need to be educated.
you're
We are
gonna
living
hear
in
this.
a diverse area. Imagine when you say to families, imagine if we did something where your child felt completely alienated, like they didn't belong there, left out, and uncomfortable because this is not what they generally do.
Right.
Imagine if your child walked outside and didn't see their family because they could not attend because they're busy working and supporting their family. You know, imagine how those children feel. In our early childhood settings, every child has to feel like they belong, and there has to be equity. That very expensive costume versus, you know, here's a sheet, be a ghost. I have no money or time for this. That's, I mean, there's no equity in that even.
Right.
There's no equity, right?
Right. And then I feel like when you have this, like, I know, like, when I worked at Head Start, one of my coworkers, she does not celebrate Halloween, but her children were in the public school and she pulled her kids out that day. Like, her kids did not go to school on Halloween, which was her choice, right? But then she was also like, why do I have to pull my kid out for a day? Like, why does my child have to be absent for a day of school because of this? And I get that, because I'm like,
They
your
shouldn't.
child doesn't have to do that.
Separation of church and state is a good thing, folks. It's a good thing. It enables every family to decide what they're going to do. And they get to do it however they wish. Have at it. But it's in our educational settings, it is not inclusive. It is not teaching children acceptance of differences. It is adding to everyone's anxiety level. It is, you know, an adult's perception of what's awesome, but that's not necessarily a child's perception of what's awesome.
Yeah. Because I think the adults are living in the past when Halloween, like, for us, Halloween was a totally different thing. You know what I mean? Like, it was different. So like, but it's not like that anymore. So you have to kind of go with the times.
You also have to go with the fact that in these times, in 2023 and forward, we know a whole lot more about the importance of cultural competence and cultural responsiveness that we didn't know in the past. Even if Halloween had never been different, you know, if we didn't have the issues we have in our society with just going door to door and asking for candy, even if we didn't have any of that, the truth is it's just not culturally respectful of everyone. That's just the truth.
Right.
I'm just going to keep advocating for. There's a time and a place for everything. And
Yeah.
somehow it got mishmashed in
Yes.
our educational settings.
Yes.
And it doesn't need to be. We need to separate it back out. But, now I'm thinking it's a good thing that we're releasing this episode now, because it can give everybody a full year to think about how are we going to explain to families that we're going to do something different next year.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's going to take you a whole year, I think, in some of these districts and these schools, because it's going to take going to meetings, going to board meetings, and bringing it up constantly.
If you want your child,
yeah,
I mean, if you want your child to participate in religiously based things, then you need to belong to a faith-based community where that can be done for all of the children, because it's part of your culture.
Yes.
And that's my soapbox about that. My amateur TED talk about that.
Yeah.
You're forgetting where things belong.
Yeah.
And we're going to get a whole bunch of anti-us responses to this episode, probably. And I can live with that, because if this is an emotional issue for you, I hope that you will sit with that and decide why it is. Why does this matter so much?
Yeah.
Because very often when I'm emotional about something like that, if I really sit with it, I discover it's really not about the children. It's more about something about me.
It's about you. Yes.
Right? It's about my memories, or it's about how I was raised in a different era before we had all of this information about children. It's something about my kinship toward it, which really is not necessarily teaching the children what we need them to learn.
Yeah, because for me, it took experiencing something different. So like everywhere I worked, or even when I went to school, we had the Halloween parade, and I was like, all right, whatever, that's what we do. This is what we do. And then last year I worked at Head Start and they didn't do it. And at first I was like, what do you mean you don't do it? Like, what? And then I experienced it. I was like, wow, this is great. I was like, this is great. This is the way it should be. And it took that for me to be like, now I get it. I get it. I get it now. But before that, I was always in it. So I was like, all right, this is what we do. Okay, it's what we do. I guess this is the way it goes. And if you don't want to celebrate it, then you don't send your kids to school, kind of thing. And now I'm like, wait, that's wrong. But it took me experiencing it differently for me to change my mind. Because up until then, if you're constantly in something, it's hard to like think outside of it.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. All right. So everybody, you sit with your feelings about this and sit with your thoughts about this, and then really give the children a lot of thought. Those children who are, it's not part of what they do. The families who may be doing it just because everybody's doing it, but maybe uncomfortable with it, or those families who are like, great, now I have to keep my child home that day because we don't do that. Either one, right? Yeah. You don't know who's uncomfortable with something because they don't always tell you. So give this a whole bunch of thought, and come back next time. Don't abandon us. Even if you disagree, come back next time, where we're going to have an episode that I think many people will agree with. Maybe. Whatever. We're out there throwing ideas out. That's what we do. Yeah. And we will catch you next time on the podcast, folks.
Bye, peeps.